The Grim Drive podcast explores mental health through the lens of professional sports and athletes. Pro athletes come forward more and more with stories about their mental health journey, what they have endured, and how they managed to push through, reflecting a mental health stigma that continues to be reduced. Pro athletes also leverage mindset to achieve peak performance, as well as representing and often driving elements of popular culture through the use of social media, technology, and personal branding. This places athletes front and center as role models for people of all ages, giving them a platform to reach many and deliver important information, including information about mental health. Welcome to the Grim Drive podcast, where we explore mental health through the lens of professional sports and athletes. My name is Jonathan Busfield. I'm here with my co-host, as always, John Cuna. Today, we're excited to have Darius Miller on as a guest, and I'll give a quick bio. Darius, also at DMillerKY on Twitter, is an American professional basketball player who played in the NBA from 2012 to 2021 for the Oklahoma City Thunder and the New Orleans Pelicans, and also played overseas in Germany for 2 years from 2015 to 2018. He played college basketball for the Kentucky Wildcats and his senior season by winning the 2012 NCAA Men's Division I Basketball Championship. Darius, thanks for joining us, man. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. We appreciate you taking the time to be on here. And, I was going to start with, we got quite a few things we're going to cover. I mean, we're going to talk about your journey as an athlete, high school all the way to the NBA, and recent retirement. We're going to talk about injury recovery. We're going to talk about the overlap between sports and mental health. And of course, we're going to get to NFTs. I was going to start with NFTs, but actually just reading your bio, and being reminded of the championship win in March Madness in 2012, and knowing that, you're originally from Kentucky, I kind of want to start there. So walk us through, what was that like being someone who went from being Mr. Basketball in the state of Kentucky, who's essentially the top player in the whole state, and going to Kentucky and playing on that team. I think you, if I'm not mistaken, you played the most games for Kentucky men's basketball in the history of the team, and winning that championship with that team in 2012 as a senior. What was that like?
It was amazing. One of the best experiences I ever had, of course, on a basketball court. It was a journey. All 4 years, we got close, so many times, and winning it my senior year on my last game meant a lot to me. I had strong relationships with the guys my senior season, so that also made it that much better. But the whole experience, just playing for the hometown team, playing in Kentucky, which is a major part of the state, a blessing and a dream come true.
That's amazing, and especially in that last game, you had a really good game, and that team. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like as a senior playing all 4 years to then be. I can't remember how many people on the team were also freshmen that were high level players. I know you had there was Anthony Davis, there was Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, there was Terrence Jones, Marquise Teague, Deron Lamb. Those were, I think, all also NBA players along with you. What was it like to have to? I mean, I would guess. I want to hear your take on this. I would guess that level of competition just on your own team in Division I college basketball really prepared you for the NBA in terms of level of competition.
Oh, for sure. Every practice was extremely difficult. Coach Cal set it up that way to be really competitive, so that the games were easier. And we all benefited from that. And like you said, it helped to prepare us for the next level.
Yeah, because that's one thing that's always, John and I have talked about this a couple of times, but what it's like for professional athletes who, in large part, have been the best at what they do, if not in their general area, in their entire state or region for their entire lives. To go from that to being at a level like the NBA, where everyone's the best player. You're surrounded by everyone's just amazing at what they do. I'd love to hear more about that in terms of, how do you adjust to that kind of thing when you get to that level and you're used to, being the guy, and then all of a sudden everyone is the guy.
I mean, it's just the same thing. It's basketball. Like you said, everybody is definitely more talented at that level. It's definitely a grind every day as far as practice and competing, but you have fun with it. I feel like most of the guys, in order to get to that point, you have to have some sort of competitiveness. You got to be some sort of competitor to get to that point. So I think most people, when you get there, you just embrace it, and it helps you to become the best player that you can be. Just that daily competition against the best in the world, some of the best in the world, I should say. There's also a lot of talent overseas too, but yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great, man. I fed off of it, and I became a better player because of it.
Well, that's amazing. It sounds like your mindset was a huge part of your success, because I would imagine there's some people that get to, even when they're used to being the best, they maybe even because they're used to being the best, they get to that level, and there's so many good players around them that has to factor into their
For
psychological
sure.
approach in some way, and maybe some are better than others. It sounds like you handled it really well. So walk me through your Mr. Basketball in the state of Kentucky in high school, which is, obviously the highest honor you can get for high school basketball in any state in the U.S. You then go play D1 4 years college at Kentucky. You get drafted, you play in the NBA, you go to Germany midway through the NBA, then back to the NBA, and then recently retired. What out of all those different stages and transitions, which one was there one that was maybe we'll get to two-part question. One that was the hardest
Hmm.
transition for you and kind of why that was the hardest, and then one that was the most enjoyable kind of stage for you.
I think the hardest transition, uh, probably going overseas at first. But that was just from a mental standpoint. I would say on the court, probably the hardest transition would be from college to pros. Um, yeah, on the court, I would say, just like you said, just kind of the point we talked about earlier. It's just a different level. Everybody was that guy in college that makes it to that level, so it's just the speed of the game's a little bit different. Um, you sometimes you might show people too much respect just because it's guys that you've been looking up to your whole career pretty much when you step on the court with them. A lot of different factors that go into that, and then yeah, off the court, I would say would be my transition to Germany. On my way to Germany, I think I had never been overseas before, and at least not for a long period of time. I was going by myself to a new country without my daughter and my wife. My wife had just had my daughter probably 2 months before, so they couldn't travel. So that was probably the hardest off the court mentally, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how did you navigate that? Being there, you were there for about 2 years, right? So did you get a chance? Was there an off season and get like little pockets where you can come back and be with family, or did they come to see you, or both, or was it mostly relying on like video chats?
Yeah, that first year, yeah, it was just three. It was probably I was probably there for 3 months, 3 or 4 months, and I just went over there by myself the first year. And then the second year and the third year, my wife and my daughter came. Not time, but for most of the time, so that made it easier. But we had an amazing time over there, for sure. It was great for us as a family and for me as a person. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the other piece you mentioned about, the speed of play, and especially you mentioned one thing about maybe giving too much respect to people. That's one thing I found interesting, because I actually saw that happen. I mean, John and I are from the Boston area, so we're
Hmm.
obviously huge Celtics fans. And one of the things that popped up this year was first year coach Ime Udoka kind of, from what he said, taking Jason Tatum aside and sort of saying to him that, hey, it's good that you are friendly with people, but you also can't give them too much respect, or else it impacts your ability on the court. It seemed like when that happened, it kind of helped him turn a corner. I don't know if it did or not, but it seemed that way.
Yeah, that's
So it's
that's that's I think that's the huge piece of it. Not a huge piece of it, but that's a pretty large piece of it, I would say, because I mean, like I said, you just grow up watching some of these guys. A lot of people my age would I would say they would grow up watching LeBron, Dwayne Wade. So when you get on the court with these guys, I mean, it's sometimes it was hard, especially early on, not to get caught up into that and give them too much respect. I mean, it kind of took a little bit for me to treat them the same way as I would treat anybody else on the basketball court, I should say.
Yeah, that's I'm fascinated by that, Darius. And I'm curious, not like you said, you grow up watching these guys, and now all of a sudden you're going toe to toe, and that must take an adjustment. Talk to me a little bit about like what went into that. Was there any preparation, or was there any purposeful thought around how to do that? And how did you find? Was it just repetition of going up against those guys day in and day out that helped you with that, or was there conversations you're having with yourself or preparation with teammates to help you with that process?
It wasn't really a long term thing. It was kind of was short, and you're thrown into the fire, and then you got to deal with it. So you don't
Right.
really get a lot of a time to like think about it. It's not like I was thinking about it leading up to the games. It was kind of more of a, hey, you step on the court, you go to warm ups. This time you look across the court, and it's a superstar. It's somebody that you've been watching for a long time. So it's more of a just a quick thing. instead of a long thing, at least for me personally. But I
Hmm.
could definitely see how it could be a lingering thing for people for sure.
Yeah, sort of like a sink or swim type of moment of you got to figure it out, and
Definitely,
if you don't, it's going to impact both you and the
for
team. Yeah,
sure.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. Things along those lines when it comes to, mindset. Are you at that level, do they expect, NBA players, pro athletes at that level to sort of just figure that stuff out themselves and self-correct as needed to adjust either in game or between games, or people on the staff, whether it's just coaches who are former players or coaches themselves, or, you know, um, non-athletic coaches, mental health professionals, other people that help with that kind of thing, and where the landscape stands with that in the NBA specifically in terms of teams having people on staff that look for maybe the non-physical analytic side of things. I think being able to pinpoint things that might help an athlete gain an edge in terms of mindset.
At first there wasn't really a team or anything in place for that to really help as far as like the mental side of the game. But now the league has gotten so much better, and I'm think not 100% sure, but I think that every team has like a mental coach, a person, male or female, man or woman or whatever, to help players get through certain things mentally. But at the beginning, it was more so the vets' job. The vets were there to kind of take the youngins under the wing and show them kind of the ropes as far as how the league goes. And then, well, mentally, you do what you need to do on your own to get ready and get prepared for that.
Do you feel? I mean, I can see how that would be a big piece of the veterans coming in, and you see those guys who've had a presence, and their word sort of carries a little bit louder in the locker room because they've just got the experience. Did you see a drop off of that? Were there certain situations where you saw guys doing more? How do people, I guess, in your personal opinion, or just what you saw when you were in the league, in terms of or like listening to a veteran guy, or both in a combination? I'm curious.
You cut out there on the last part. Can you repeat that part, please?
Yeah, my question is sort of, you said that, it used to be on the shoulders of sort of the veteran guys to kind of step up and help younger players adjust and get into the right mindset. And now there are people there on staff to help with that process. Did you see an impact or a shift and a change in the league, or, what are your thoughts around that? Do you feel it disempowers veterans to do that? Does it make any difference at all? I'm just kind of curious your thoughts.
I think it's a good thing to have in place now, especially as the league gets younger and younger. Um, I feel like the vets that I had or that was in the league back in the day when I first came in, there's not a lot of them left. So I think there should be definitely a mental team, I guess you would call it, to help the players get through those kind of things. And there's a lot of different things to navigate now. I definitely think there needs someone there to help players deal with the mental side of things for sure. So I'm glad that they are starting to really take that. I shouldn't say take it serious because I feel like now that they have more information, they're acting on it, and I'm really happy to see that because it definitely can be a lot of mental challenges when dealing with the things that you have to deal with playing professional sports.
No, that's awesome to hear. It definitely seems like since 2015, things have really, and especially since 2018, but since 2015, things have really changed quite a bit in pro sports with regard to them taking that
For
seriously
sure.
and paying attention to that information. And you mentioned like the role of veterans on teams. I've always been fascinated by that because I think for some fans will kind of chirp at those players that are on the bench most of the game. Like I'm thinking like a Jared Dudley or like a Udonis Haslam, and they might sort of wonder why is this person being paid by this team when they really don't play, and that's exactly what it is. I feel like it's such an underrated roster spot to have that, even with now that things have changed, where there's a team of people who may have insight into the psychological or mental health aspect of things. To have a vet on the team who can take people under his wing and be able to show them the ropes of like how to be a pro in the league and how to navigate your schedule day to day, just being an adult and living independently, as a pro, traveling, all that kind of stuff. That's got to be invaluable. So I always found it interesting to see which players, as they shift to different phases of their career, kind of become one of those players on teams. I'm interested when it comes to like, what you've seen as an NBA player, from 2012 to 2021, you started before things shifted in 2015, and you were there after the shift kind of started. John and I have always wondered, do players trust, when a pro sports team brings in a specialist to work, whether it's a psychologist or a sports psychologist, mental health coach, mental health professional? Do they trust that because the team brought it in, or is there some skepticism around whether they can really be open and utilize that?
I think the
resource?
trust has to be built. I wouldn't say that people just necessarily trust them as soon as they come in just because the team says so. When you're talking about things that are that close to you and that intimate, I feel like there always has to be a relationship built between you and that person before you go and discuss the things that might be bothering you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, that makes a ton of sense. It's related to the mental health side of things. I know John's done a lot of work on the psychological aspects of injury recovery, and so we talk a lot about performance mindset and a lot about the psychological aspects of being a high level athlete and what that means both as an athlete and as a person. But injury recovery is one thing that I think is starting to get more attention because it has such a psychological component. I know you went through a pretty big Achilles injury, so I'd love to hear you speak, and maybe John, you can ask some questions on this one about what that was like for you to go through that specific injury from a psychological standpoint, both in terms of the injury itself and then trying to get back to playing level.
I mean, I had my good days and I had my bad days, But me as a person, I just try to take everything where I'm in a tough or situation that I might be long. I just try to take it day by day. That's something that I'm really big on. So every day I just had to wake up and get better every single day. And of course, there were days where that didn't go as planned, but most of the days I felt like that's what kept me going. I try not to look at, I'll be out this amount of time, or I just woke up and each day was each day. I feel like just being present in those moments help take away from the rest of the stuff. Just taking it day by day, being present in that moment and trying to get better every day.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you mentioned that too. I think, a lot of the stuff that we do and I do with athletes who are coming back from recovery is I find that they're focusing on the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
So for to say what you were talking about, right, that they're focused on, well, I'm going to be gone for 6 months. So when I come back, I'm going to be so far behind. I'm not going to be where I'm going to be. Their head starts flooding with doubt and fear. Right. And then that's how you live your day.
Sure.
And that can, you do that for a recovery period, especially for like an Achilles or an ACL or an MCL or whatever. And we're talking months. That's months long training, really practice of the wrong mindset. And it's encouraging to hear, Darius, and I hope that the people listening too, and I hope this message spreads, that the idea of just focusing on what you can do each day to get better back towards that, and just kind of thinking smaller in that piece is a really helpful idea. And I'm curious too to hear a little bit about, you guys have access to some of the best PT and some of the best recovery and rehab facilities, probably in the world. I'm just kind of curious to hear like what your path was back from injury. I think some of the things we hear, with athletes that we work with is it's isolating, right? So for, I'm just in the training room by myself. I kind of have access to the team, but not really. I might not be traveling with them. I might not be going to every game. So you talk to me a little bit about like what that process was like for you, and just give a little more detail about that.
Yeah, it's definitely isolating. You spend a lot of time with whoever your trainer, whoever your strength and conditioning guy is. You spend a lot of one-on-one time with them. I built some really good relationships with the two guys that helped me throughout my whole injury and recovery process. So it was, like I said, some days it was tough when I focused too much on how long it's been or how long I had to go. But most days we're strengthening my calf muscle back up, trying to get the muscle built back up. I'd come in the morning with my training guy, and then I would come back later with the strength and conditioning guy, and it was just like probably about 2-3 hours a day, every day. And I just try to stick to whatever they had planned for me. And like I said, just stay present, stay positive throughout the whole thing. But yeah, it's isolating. There was times where you didn't feel like you're a part of the team. You're never around them, There was a lot that went into it, but yeah, it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't bad, you know, as good as it could be.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
best it could
exactly.
be. Yeah, right. Exactly. As good as
Yeah,
it could be. Yeah, I think never was at the level or the talent level that you were for your sport. I had an injury for myself as well, and remember some of the same types of things. And the isolation and the separation from the team was probably the
yeah,
hardest. Like you're an athlete and you respond well to routines and to schedules, and then all of a sudden everything is like tipped
sure.
upside down and it's all this new stuff. And those isolation days or those down days can be really, really tough. And it sounds like some of the things you utilized to help you through that was just trying to remember being present. Were there other things that you utilized, whether it be other people, supports, types of things that you used for yourself, like on those down days that you found to be particularly helpful for yourself?
Um, I just tried to stay busy, really. I have two daughters. I spent a lot of time with them. I had a lot of time at home. My wife, of course, spent a lot of time with her. I feel like our relationships got stronger through those times. Uh, I tried to learn different things. But yeah, I just tried to stay busy mentally when I wasn't recovering, when I wasn't doing my recovery stuff. I just tried to take time doing other things. I'm a gamer. I play games. I love movies. I watch movies. So I just tried to stay busy.
Hmm.
So take away from just the idle mind and just thinking about what I had in front of me.
Yeah, surround yourself with
For sure.
love and support from the people that are around you that care for you. Yeah, I mean, I love that too. And Jotham and I always talk about this type of stuff too. And I think distraction can get a bad reputation, but if it's used in the short term capacity or limited capacity, it
For
can be
sure.
really effective. Especially if it's the only technique you've got, then it probably won't be
For sure.
effective for very long. But short term, it sounds good. And so, quick tangent here, Darius. Also a gamer, so I got to know like what's your go-to on those days that you're looking to just kind of zone out for a bit.
Oh man, nowadays, um,
Yeah.
it just depends on the day. Honestly, I still play games. I'm still a gamer. I play games. I like taking bike rides. Me and my wife just took a bike ride not too long ago. Uh, some shows. I love podcasts. Feel like you learn a lot from podcast, or you can if you listen to the right things. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
it's just a day, honestly.
That's great. That last question in terms of the rehab and the recovery component too. One of the things that Jotham and I talk about, I'm really trying to push the concept of what I call prehab. Going at injury and going at mental skills from a preventative means rather than waiting for something to happen and then trying to recover. I think one of the things that I find with working with athletes, particularly going through low parts of their season, confidence takes a dip, going through injury, you know, trying to teach and learn in a state of mind when you're in, for some of these athletes, the lowest that they've been is a really, really challenging uphill battle for them. So we're really trying to work on teaching skills and coming at it from a preventative
For sure.
means that when or if things happen, they're feeling better supported and having better understanding like where I can go from here. And I'm curious to know if, when you were going through your injury, I know you had a lot of support around you from PT stuff and from trainers and things like that. Was it ever brought up for you to talk to somebody more about like the mental recovery component of that? And just wanted to know if those were conversations that were being had.
Um, not really. I think it was offered, but I didn't really take advantage of that. I felt like I was pretty good in that aspect. If I ever needed to vent or talk through something, I would talk to about it, or I had other people in my family I could go to. And I mean, I'm a huge person I like controlling your thoughts is really huge for me. So that's something that I practice daily anyway. So I figured I'd be good on that side of things.
That's great. So one more follow up question, and Dr. Massey wanted to ask a question too. I'm just curious, what does that look like for you? What types of practices do you put in place for working on that mental set in terms of like controlling the thoughts and managing them?
Meditation, but I've I've been slacking a lot on that recently. I need to get back on it, but that was big for me, especially in my time in Germany and when I was going through my injuries. Uh, Learning that always helped me learn new things, try new things. Um, that's probably the two main things, honestly.
Meditation is hard, man. I go through periods where I do pretty well with it,
Yeah,
and then you know how
same with
life
me.
happens, a couple days kind of get in your way, and then it's like, bam, it's been like 3 months
Exactly.
and I haven't done it. And I noticed I noticed it's a huge difference. And I always like think I get to like the 2 3 month mark without it, and I'm like, you real then you get back into it and you realize like, why
Right.
the hell did I stop this? But it's like, I think it's good to be kind to yourself and to kind of self correct without too much self shaming. Just hop back on the horse and kind of keep going. But it is hard to stick with that. And you said so many good things that clearly point to like how resilient you are as a person. You talked about strategic use of distraction. You talked about how key it is to stay present. I think that's very hard for people to
Yeah,
do a lot of times, but staying present and being mindful is so key when it comes to in general, but especially injury
sure.
recovery. And then you also mentioned leaning on supports, and kind of what I heard you say was like taking advantage of the time instead of dwelling on the time that you're experiencing injury. You're taking advantage of the time to learn new things, so growing personally, but also connecting with family on an even deeper level. And I think those are like 5 things right there, 6 things that half of those would help. To have all 6 was must have been very helpful. And I would imagine that also impacts post professional life. As someone who recently retired, have you leaned on similar
Oh, for
strategies,
sure.
and what has that adjustment been like to go from playing pro to being retired now?
It hasn't been tough for me, honestly. I'm kind of having fun with it, just like being in a new chapter of my life, being able to explore new things. I've been playing basketball since I can remember. My dad played basketball, his dad played basketball, so it's like now I get to the point, and don't get it wrong, I love basketball. Still play on Sundays every day, have fun with it, but I just got to the point where I felt like it was time for something new and something different. So the retirement aspect hasn't been bad at all. Honestly, I'm loving it. Pushing myself to the limits, new things, trying to build, create, and like I said earlier, getting closer with my family. I think the injury and then quarantine, COVID kind of accelerated that. I finally got to sound and be at home and just think and explore different things, and it felt really good. So it kind of sped up my retirement, I would say. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm really enjoying it for sure.
That's amazing, man. I know one part of what seems like to be part of your routine in retirement is being very involved in the NFT community, which is how we kind of connected. We connected through Twitter, but mainly through like the Psychedelics Anonymous space, as being people in that community, the Psychedelics Anonymous NFT community. So I'm always interested to hear from other people in the NFT community, but on this podcast as well. What your kind of like journey into NFTs was. Like, when did you get into it? How long ago? And what was the person or catalyst or thing that kind of made you start to learn about that?
Um, I think the first time I heard about it, probably about a year and some change ago. Like I said, I'm a gamer, so there's a lot of times where I'll just go looking for new things in gaming, and then just one day I was looking on YouTube and I seen Gary Vee on an interview talking about NFTs, so I explored it a little bit, mentioned it to a couple of my friends, and then I didn't really get into it. Then probably about, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago, my friend came back to me. He had dove in head first, was pretty experienced in the space, and he came back and told me like everything that has happened and kind of reintroduced me to the space. And that's when I kind of jumped right in and kind of fell in love with the space. I like the ability for anybody can create. Just try to take what they have in their mind and make something out of it, kind of like a business almost. There's good and there's bad with that. Of course, you see a lot of rug pulls. You see the people just trying to make a quick buck out of that. But I think on the other side of that, you get to see people just live out their dreams. If they have a great idea, I think the technology behind this allows you to present it to people and just kind of run with it if it's good. So I think that's the thing that brought me in the most, especially like I said, in my time now where I'm pushing myself to the limits, trying to create and think of different things that I can experiment with. So I don't know, it just kind of felt really good to get involved in that. And there's amazing art, there's amazing ideas. There's great things for gaming. Like I said, I'm a gamer, so that all of that just combined it and made me come to the space.
Very well said. Yeah, and it is such like a blank slate for like really
For
smart,
sure.
creative, intelligent people to come in and just build from the ground up. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, at least not in my lifetime. I think when the internet first came around, I was probably around 10 years old and didn't wasn't into computers and didn't really understand that kind of stuff. So to be part of that now, even just an observer and someone who tries to connect with people in this space is really been fascinating to see. And it's interesting because Gary Vee is the first person that I heard talk about it as well. I think it was around May or June of 2021. And I heard, yeah, I've been following him for a while. I heard him start talking about
Yep.
MetaMask. I'm like, what is a MetaMask? And, I wanted to trust the dude because I'm like, what this guy is into
Right.
always turns to gold. So I should just be paying attention. And I was so busy and I like kind of let it slide. And then I regret that because his project obviously is doing really well.
You
I
and
wish I
me
had
both.
hopped in on that. But then towards the end of, exactly. Then towards the end of 2021, I think I started hearing it more on like, podcast you mentioned, like, there's certain podcasts I go to, like
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss is a podcast I listen to quite a bit. And he has a lot of tech people on there. And I kept hearing it around October, November 2021. And to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm not a natural in this space, but I have to just push myself to figure it out. And it took a month and did a couple deep dives and I've been obsessed ever since. So definitely a cool space to be a part of. Any projects that, you don't have to necessarily mention any if you don't feel comfortable doing that, but any projects that you in particular support either because of the people or because of the mission or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a few like of course you see my profile picture, the Psychedelics Anonymous. I love what they're
Yep.
building. Love just how genuine it feels. The message behind it is what originally brought me to that collection, to that project. And I mean, they've been extremely transparent. You can see what they're building. You can see their vision. I love projects where you can just see what they're trying to build and see their vision. It's not necessarily just a picture and like, hey, we're making something. It's more, I like more clear visions on where people are trying to go. Most of my investments are in the gaming side. You know, I got a few collections in that. I won't I won't mention them. I guess I don't want anybody to go and buy it or anything, and then it not go so well. So yeah, but there's a few collections I like, but that's more so what I look for when I'm buying into a collection or just an artist and their story. I like learning about artists and their stories, following them, seeing what they're building. And like I said, seeing their vision. Uh, and yeah, that's pretty much what will draw me to collection.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love trying to tap into, people who I believe in and want to support, regardless of how the project ends up going. Because there's a lot of factors that are outside of their control. They might
For
do everything
sure.
right. And like anything with business, and it might not go their way. But when you find people that are well intentioned and are talented, it always feels good to try to support them in any way that you can. And I totally agree with what you said about watching, like seeing the roadmap and watch their vision unfold. I think it's a great example. One thing I've noticed about the NFT space is you're kind of like seeing in real time what it's like for people to try to build a business, because
Right.
one key factor that stands out is that one mistake I see people make when they want to get into business or they have goals relative to business is that they think they have to have every aspect 100% figured out before they
Right.
start, and it ends up kind of
Right.
paralyzing them. I think you see a lot of NFT communities, they have 50% figured out, 60%, but they don't let the rest not being stop them
For
from
sure.
starting on what they do know and seeing how they go. So we're gonna wrap up soon. I know we're going to have some time at the end here for Q&A for anyone who wants to. No one has to speak. No one has to come up and request to speak or ask a question to Darius, but we do want to leave that portion of time. So this whole space is being recorded. We're going to edit out the Q&A portion. So anyone who asks questions, your questions will not be on the actual podcast. You don't have to worry about that. We don't have to get any releases signed or anything like that. So I'm going to wrap up the podcast here just so we have that outro at the end, and then we'll save some time here for a Q&A for anyone who wants to request to speak. So just as a quick reminder to people, we always add all the helpful information and links that we describe in the show notes and on our website at grimdrive.com. I want to encourage people to follow all of us on Twitter. You can follow Darius at @DMillerKY. And John is at Riser and Tread. And I am at Jotham LICSW. Encourage everyone to to follow us on Twitter. We do quite a few spaces. We're trying to get into this a little bit more. We do the podcast once every 2 weeks, basically bi-weekly now, where we have a guest. We also have a couple other spaces here and there, sometimes through the PA community, the Psychedelics Anonymous community, sometimes through the Astromojis NFT community as well. So we want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of the Grim Drive podcast for our interview with Darius Miller. We'll be back in 2 weeks. But again, we encourage people to follow us on Twitter, where we'll be hosting more spaces coming up, including one with Astromoji's NFT community called The Coaching Zone with John and Jotham. It's going to be Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. This week, the first one's going to be at 3 p.m., but moving forward will be at 2 p.m. And another one that I sometimes co-host through the Psychedelics Anonymous community called PA Sports Talk, which we're going to try to do bi-weekly. We're not sure on the day and time yet, but we encourage people to tune in for that. And thanks for joining us for this episode.